beautiful people. How are you today? This is Destiny. Destiny forever. Guys, I'm back. On a more serious note, I am back. I'm back on the topic of the ego. So let me just kind of like ask a couple questions here. What do you know about your ego? What do you know about ego traps? What do you know about the dark night of the soul? Now, the dark night of the soul is the death of the ego, but I always call the dark night of the soul the death of the ego. But those are things that we need to really think about, my people. I'm doing these videos in the last few weeks because these videos is helping to empower you, is helping you to think about things, examine yourself, and just, you're putting yourself out there for a self-evaluation. You're making sure you are who you believe that you are. You're making sure if you're not, that you're going to keep working at becoming the best version of who the Creator wants you to be. And I'm going to get started because this is going to be two parts of this video. Tonight is part one. Welcome everyone, this is your girl Destiny, and I am getting to this video right now, and I just welcome you to come into the room. Part one, the topic is the ego death. When the ego dies, the soul awakens. Now people, listen, there are some of us who live free, and they see life as it is, and then they move through it and react to it in the way that is best for them. But for many of us people, listen, we are controlled by our ego or controlled by our sense of self and our identity. Now, the ego, it holds us back because it puts a lens on duality over the real world. I don't know how much you know about duality, but I will jump into that in a few minutes. Now, instead of seeing life as it is, people, that ego tends to divide concepts into two opposite sides. And let me explain that. Two opposite sides like left and right, right and wrong, love and hate, peace and war, truth and lie. Those are dualities. Those are dualities. It's like contending against one another, like the warring of two different teams warring against one another, not really actually being in agreement. So my people, listen to this. These divisions bring others so much suffering to our lives, or suffering to their lives. And then you know what? Instead of seeing everyone as equals, then the ego, it forces us to categorize, my people, others, putting them into boxes, putting them into specific groups, and it's always that duality that plays out. So, the ego, go back and say it again, it forces us to categorize others, and in making greater and lesser people, experiences, thoughts, places, and emotions. But listen, the ego, people, it forces us to think that some things are wrong and then some things are right. And that is causing nothing but hatred, resentment, argument, fights and bickering, and all those things amongst humanity. And they're continuously warring against one another. So I asked you the question, what do you know about your ego? What is your ego? Well, let me tell you what the ego is. The ego is an identity of our own construction. It is our beliefs we have about our personality, about our talents, about our abilities, life experiences, relationships, etc., etc. And list just goes on, my people. It's the mental construct of our very own self. That is what the ego is. It's what we use to damage, and what we use to damage and to destroy our very own selves. While it can appear that the ego is static, it isn't though. It really isn't static. Rather now, the ego is active, is dynamic, and it's changing, my people. After all, we're changing as we learn about ourselves, our true identity, our purpose. We're constantly learning. And then we have more life experiences. So, the kinds of thoughts that contribute to the ego are anything that is negative or things that are boasting, bragging. And then the Bible says that pride goes before a fall. And the Bible always talks about being negative, told to put a guard over our lips. Got to watch the words that's coming out of our mouth. Because we create our world with our words, whether they are positive or negative. So, the kinds of thoughts that contribute to the ego are things like, I'm bad at math. I'm smart. See, that's boasting. I'm emotionally mature. I'm better than most people at winning. See, that's boasting. I'm dumb. That's negative. I'm stupid. That's negative. These are some examples, the kinds of thoughts that contribute to the ego. So my people, guess what? The ego, it hides behind that I and that me in those thoughts and statements about our identity. And then the ego is difficult to see. It appears as real because it's our attachment, people, to descriptions of our very own identity. And then we use our ego to understand the world. In fact, listen, it is quite difficult for the unaware person or the person that is not consciously awakened to discern the difference between what the ego is and what is really themselves. So, I mentioned in the beginning, the ego death. So what is the ego death? Let me explain that. Listen, people. The ego death. It isn't truly a death, for the ego will always be a part of us. It will be a part of who we are. It will always be there. Instead, my people, it is more like a transcendence, because we evolve beyond the shackles of our ego. And what we are doing, we'll leave the ego behind, learning to control our very own lives without the influence of the ego. So that's when the ego dies, when we take back the power that we have given it to control and maneuver, manipulate our lives from day one. We allow the ego to program us, to guide us into places that we had no business going. We just gave them the power, the authority to rule our lives. But when we stop doing that, my people, and we just walk beyond that ego, shutting the door on it, cutting those straps, those straps from those tracks, from those traps that they are trying to hold you in, we have to continue to transcend. And we must evolve beyond the shackles of our ego. And my people, we definitely have to leave it behind. And learning to control our lives without the ego playing a part in our lives or causing any kind of influence. And when we leave behind the ego, that is what you call the ego death. When we leave behind the ego in ego death, people, then we return to our true self, our true nature. And then we learn to live beyond the confines of the ego's There are dualistic reality. See, that's those things that, like I said, right or wrong, good or bad, all those kind of, all those dualistic things. That is when we live beyond those confines of the ego's dualistic reality. It's when we learn how to move beyond what the ego has programmed and said that we are, and we start taking the words of the divine creator for true and for real, and start believing it and walking in it, and begin to speak those things into our lives, what God the Creator has said about us, till they manifest itself. But my people, listen. I'm going to repeat it again. When we leave behind the ego in ego death, we return to our true self, our true nature, and then we learn to live beyond the confines of the ego's dualistic reality. But this experience can be both beautiful, my people, and yet so terrifying. Depending on how ready that the individual is to let go of the ego. Depending on the individual, if they have made up their mind that they're going to shut the ego down and start following the path and the plan that the divine creator has predestined for them to walk in. And going through that process, like I said, it could be beautiful moments, people. Then there are times there are really terrifying moments. And they're just going to depend on how ready that individual is to let go of their ego. Now, for some, this complete loss of identity, it can be the most petrifying experience ever. When you wake up, when you start waking up and you realize, oh, all my life I've been lied to. I've been controlled, I've been manipulated, I've been programmed by a whole lot of different people, the world systems, the matrix systems, the school systems, the church organizations. You finally wake up, everything that I actually been told, it's not me. Everything that I was taught, it's not true. There's a lot of lies. There's a whole lot of things that people had said, that had taught, religion, community programs. I don't care what it is, parents, because people did not know any better, and they only could teach you what they only knew. But we were programmed because we never questioned anything. We never were bold enough to step out there and say, that's not seem right. It just don't make any sense. But my people, for some, this complete loss of identity, I'm telling you, it can be the most petrifying experience ever. Because the ego's defense mechanism, my guys, I'm telling you, it kicks in to keep itself attached to its person. That ego ain't gonna let go. He don't want to let go because he know that he can control you, manipulate you, and keep you at your lower self, where you will never believe and trust the divine creator of the universe to believe that you are greater than what it ever can be. So you don't believe that the Creator said that the greater one is in you, that you are God and little children and children of the Most High God. See, the ego knows, if you ever knew what power, what supernatural being that you are, that it will lose that control and that power. And all the ego wants is to keep control over you, to keep you running from place to place behind things, always losing, my people. So, as I said, that is the most petrifying experience ever. When you lose your identity. But because that ego, my people, the ego defense, I'm saying it's going to eventually, going to kick in. Because they see you now and you grow into your greater higher self. You see now that you're speaking more positivity. And you see that you're standing up for what you believe in. You declaring that you are the child of the Most High Creator of the universe. And you now walking in the light instead of darkness. Now you're constantly always gravitating toward positivity. And you're moving into a higher realm of your soul consciousness, the ego like, I'm gonna lose them, so they try to pull you back, and it is something the ego do not want to let go of. It's the reason why there's a war between the soul and your ego, and it's constantly warring, because the creator of the universe, he wants to pull you higher, to bring you to the place that he has predestined for you to be from the very foundation of this world. He wants to pull you all the way up to the top of your crown chakra. That's the kingdom of heaven, because he had placed the kingdom of heaven, and he had placed the kingdom of God himself within you at the beginning of the foundation of this earth, my people. So the ego said, I can't let go. The ego's going to fight. It's going to war with you, but you got to be strong. You got to be steadfast. And the Bible said, and unmovable, my people, always bound in. Because the ego eventually is going to lose its grip, and you can step up in your power, and you take all the power that you are giving it from him and give it no more to the ego. But the ego is going to try to hold on to you. But my people, listen. For others, though, the death of the ego is just another step on a long life path of spirituality. And like I said, it depends on the person. Some people look at it like, okay, it's a struggle. It's something that I may never get beyond. It's going to take me forever to get beyond. You got to change your mind and reprogram your mind. Like the word said, I can do all things through him, the almighty creator of the universe, because he strengthens me. You got to start believing totally, absolutely in everything that the creator God has said about you, because he predestined your life. I'm telling you, people, you are great. You are powerful. You are more than conquerors. So it depends on the person. How much you believe, how much you trust in the divine creator. And for those that believe, the death of the ego is just another step on a long life path of spirituality. So, the ego death, my people, is something that we all is going to stand at the door one day and face, if we ever to grow and become our best and higher, greater self who the creator creates to be. So when the ego dies, people, the soul truly awakens. You're found here, opening yourself, your conscious state of being to your higher level of consciousness, and you're becoming the light that the creator had created for you to be. Well, people, I'm out of here. That's part one. Part two is coming up, and I will continue that. And what I'm going to do with part two, I'm going to tell you in part two, my people, 7 steps that you have to go through to kill that ego. That's the ego death. Namaste. I hope you got something out of this. I love you, and I will see you guys at the next video. And your girl Destiny is out here. Namaste. Good night.